Welcome once again to Rouge Radio, and it's time for the CIS Update segment. I'm Reed Duffy, pleased to be joined at this time from TSN Radio 990. It's Moe Khan. Moe, welcome back.
Thanks again, Reed. Looking forward to it as usual. Now we're playoff mode. It's a lot of excitement.
And we'll start with the Canada West semifinal, the first one. It was Friday night, November the 4th, as the Calgary Dinos beat the Regina Rams by a final score of 16-4. The Dinos did what they were supposed to do, but Regina didn't want to let them do it easily.
No, and I had tweeted earlier on Friday or Saturday morning, pardon me, that Calgary won the football game. It was a pretty no, but they won the football game, and that's what matters most to these guys. And you have to look at it this way, Reed. What's going to carry the Dinos in this playoff scenario that they're in is their running game. Lambala, Woodson, these are two guys that they have to rely upon along with Matt Walter. Those three guys are going to be that three-headed attack that the Dinos will need to move along in this playoff bracket that they're in. And given that Regina gave them fits throughout this football game, you have to give them credit because Regina outplayed them in terms of time of possession by 3 minutes, overall 31 minutes to 28 minutes. But in hindsight, though, Calgary has far too much strength and too much talent on both sides of the football to relent to a team like Regina Rams, who were decimated by injuries all season long. But then again, Eric Zawinski is a guy that will have to maintain the flow of the football game. He has to keep everyone guessing with his passing attack and who he has open. So as great as they are with the run game, Zawinski has to become better and more efficient as a passer because he can't be 50% going against UBC next weekend. Yeah,
a tough day for him. And speaking of UBC, and Saturday, November the 5th, as we move on to the big slate of games, they knock off the Saskatchewan Huskies by a final score of 27-22 in the second Canada West semifinal. So they set up that matchup against Calgary, but what a game it was for Billy Green, 27-44, 342 yards through the air.
Well, Billy Green, you said it perfectly. He was the one that carried the UBC Thunderbirds to victory. I mean, this is a guy that we've spoken about in weeks past and what he has done for this football team as a whole. And that's why going ahead with what they did, I thought this was a trap game for UBC playing Saskatchewan. And I know Saskatchewan had a rough season themselves, but going into Vancouver, they could have easily won this football game. UBC hosting their first playoff game in many years. And looking at this, I thought Saskatchewan could have taken it. They lost by 5. It wasn't a big blowout score that many people anticipated for this to be. But looking at this right now, guys, I mean, Mitch Schuster, a receiver who has a good game himself, 117 yards receiving, he's going to have to face a lot of press coverage against the Dinos next weekend. And that's why Billy Green, as great as he was in this football game, he'll need his supporting cast to be even better than what he has done, even though he is the MVP of that football team and pretty much for Can West. So great job by him, great job by UBC. But then again, now they have to go into Alberta in the cold of Calgary to play a very tough Dino team next week.
Yeah, not necessarily going to be a whole lot of fun. UBC's going to have to bring the A game against Calgary. We'll get to setting up that game momentarily, but before we go there, the Atlantic semifinal was played on Saturday as well. St. Mary's goes over St. FX by a final of 25-2. I don't think anybody was surprised by that one.
No, I saw St. FX play first time when they played Concordia back in September. They weren't a very good team at all. It's a very young team. Cody Wensley, a guy who didn't do well then, didn't do well over the weekend as he had 2 INTs on 311 in passing. And with all due respect to Gary Waterman's program, it's a rebuilding program. They lost far too many guys to the CFL and to other programs in CIS football. So this was no match at all for St. Mary's, who, by the way, with what they have gone through this season, with them getting the win against U of M and losing the appeal, they have a chip on their shoulder. I know Jack Creighton is a guy that's been up and down all throughout the season here, but what's going to come down to is 2 guys that will be key in next week's game against Acadia. And looking even further ahead with their defense, St. Mary's has played some good, tough defense this season. And if they can get that again next week against Acadia, then I don't think this is a surprise at all if St. Mary's does go into Acadia's backyard and beat them next weekend.
Yeah, these games setting up for the Bulls next week are going to be fantastic ball games, and that continues right through into Ontario. McMaster beats Queens 40-13. There were some people, Mo, that thought that Queens might give Mac a bit more of a run, but a very determined Marauder squad is going to the Yates Cup.
Yeah, you know what? The kiss of death last week when Queens was somewhat trash talking on TV when they beat Laurier, I said to myself, you can't trash talk McMaster like that. McMaster has the arsenal to throw the football left, right, and center. And Kyle Quinlan, you have to focus on his eyes early in that football game, they read, he really established himself in the passing attack, even though his stats will not indicate that. He made some big plays after big plays, but let's not forget, though, the McMaster defense came up huge, intercepting the young rookie Mitchell 6 times in that football game. And, look, with all due respect, we saw Pat Sheen at halftime. He didn't concede defeat, but he knew that they had a long road ahead in the second half if they were going to make this a football game. But look, what's going to be key for McMaster, though, moving ahead, as great as their pass game was, Chris Pizzetta, who had a fantastic game against Queens, he'll have to establish himself again next weekend against a very tough Western football team. And DeRoche, a guy that I like on this football team, had a great game with 103 yards receiving. If these two guys can be that force, the X and O factor for the McMaster Marauders next weekend, then Seth Potasiak might have a Yates Cup ring down the road.
Yeah, they definitely need DeCroce. They need Pizzetta to help Kyle Quinlan, who had a good game in his own right yesterday, and they're going to have to do it against a very tough Western team who last week, Michel Belanger and I were talking about a possible upset, Western and Windsor. Windsor came close in the end, but Western still beats them by a final of 33-27, what might have been the weekend's most exciting ball game.
It definitely was, especially at the end of the football game. I mean, if Windsor had made that stop where Tyler Varga got that key first down with less than 2 minutes left in the football game, who knows what could have happened. Let's not forget, though, Windsor had that botched field goal attempt just before half, which resulted in points for Western, and it was something that you look at as a whole and say to yourself, well, what if they didn't do that botched field goal and ran out the clock? They might have won this football game on the road. And you have to give credit to Windsor, though. This is a team that's still under the interim tag of the head coaching position. They came out with a very good game. And with all due respect, the Western football team now is a run team. Look what happened. They had 17 total passing attempts in that game compared to almost 50 rushes as a whole for this team. So if McMaster's going to go into this football game, you put 8 guys in the box. You might even put 9 guys in the box for that matter to stop Varga and Riva. And that's why Western, if I'm them, this isn't an easy run for them to go up against McMaster this time around. And we remember what happened with Mac and Western back in September when UW went to Mac's house and beat them very easily on national TV. So there's a lot of stake right now with the Yates Cup, but also McMaster is going to be very motivated to prove everybody out there that there are no pushovers playing against a very good UW Mustangs football team.
Moving into Quebec today, it was the Montreal team going over Sherbrooke by a final score of 33-15. The Caravan, they were not going to let Sherbrooke beat them. They desperately wanted to get into the Dunsmore Cup, and they pull it off.
Hey, you know what? I said this earlier in the week on the station. I said to beat a team once is very tough. To beat them twice is very difficult. To beat them 3 times in one season, even harder. And guess what happened? Sherbrooke couldn't do it. Yes, this was Sherbrooke's first ever home game that they were hosting, and they had a huge crowd, almost 10,000 fans that were at the football game. But U of M, you figure going into that hostile environment with a very terrible field that it was in Sherbrooke, with the very muddy, pitchy grass field conditions that it is in Sherbrooke, they looked like the team that was more adapting to the fact that they were going up against a beehive, so to speak, here. And look, what it came down to, though, Reed, was that Jeremy Doyen-Rock was ineffective. He had 13 yards passing in the first half. He had 3 INTs. Simon Charbonneau-Campeau had 2 catches, but those catches were late in the second half of that football game. They played an excellent road football game. Bertrand Sené had 160 yards rushing, and those were tough yards that he gained against a very young and hungry Sherbrooke front 7. Overall, if you look at it this way, they had almost 10 guys that caught a football from Alex Nadeau-Pius. This was a full team effort. Everyone played well, even though their special teams gave up a punt return for a touchdown from Ismail Bamba and had some very, very terrible punts from Pierre-Paul Jalina as well. So U of M, you have to give them credit. They came into a beehive, they went in there, they won that football game, and now they go into the Dunsmore Cup, in Danny Machocha's first year as a coach at U of M.
Very impressive accomplishment from Danny Machocha, but unfortunately for him, he's got to go up against an angry Laval team that beats Concordia 33-7. Prudhomme and Levesque have incredible games for the Rouge et Or in this one.
No, that's it, though. Joe Prudhomme, a guy that I've questioned in months past and years past, can he be that quarterback? Last year against Western in the semifinals, he got beat up. He got beat up, and then in the finals he got very lucky when Calgary came in very intimidated. This year, I question his passing ability. Can he be that guy? Well, he answered the bell as he passed for 280 yards against Concordia's very stingy secondary. As a whole, Sebastian Levesque, we all know about their run game. Laval is a run team first with Levesque, with Pascal Lachal, of course, and, of course, Maxime Boutin. These are the three guys that I look upon in next week's game that have to establish that run attack to make things easier for Prudhomme to get what he wants. And let's not forget, Reed, going to Stade Telus is a tough place. The last team to beat the Laval Rouge et Or at home was U of M in 2004. So there is a lot at stake, of course, but with the Dunsmore Cup on the line here. But also, Glenn Constantine has that bitter taste in his mouth from that earlier in the season when they lost to U of M down in Montreal. And he's going to pound that into the guys' minds. So, look, we're not going to allow this football team to do what they did to us back in Week 6. It was in early October. So we have to come out there, play a better football game early on. Keep this in mind, though, Reed. Laval is a fast-starting team. If they get off to a fast start like they did against Concordia, it might be a tough uphill battle for the Carabins.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a very tough battle for the Carabins. It should be a great game for the Dunsmore Cup, though. And speaking of these games next week, let's set up the schedule. It'll start on Friday, November the 11th with the Canada West Final, the Hardy Cup, UBC versus Calgary. Mo, what do you think in that one?
With all due respect, I think UBC has had a fantastic season, and Billy Green probably will be one of the Heck Credit nominees down the road here. But I just think that Calgary has far too much firepower. I think that Blake Neal, just like with Glenn Constantine, is going to hammer it into the guys and tell you guys, look, we came up flat against UBC way back when, and we didn't play well last week. We have to come out bigger and play a much better football game. And remember, this game is going to be nationally televised, so there's a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes that will be watching this football game. So I want to see how UBC will react under the lights with the TV cameras on them next weekend. And remember, though, this is a Friday night game, which is pretty advantageous for Calgary or UBC, whoever wins this football game, because they'll have one full week practically to get themselves ready for their semifinal game on the 18th.
Yeah, either one of those teams will be very happy to come out of that game with a win and a lot of time to prepare. Moving on to Saturday, November the 12th, the Looney Bowl. It's going to be St. Mary's versus Acadia. It's the marquee matchup in the Atlantic. Who do you think takes that one?
Without question, I think St. Mary's is going to take this football game. I think this year, I know Acadia has had a great season, with what they've done so far in AUS, but remember, St. Mary's is the top dog, no pun intended to their nickname, in that conference. And without question, Steve Samara is a guy that I think is an excellent coach when it comes to playoff preparation, and he'll have his guys ready for this football game. Acadia, remember, they're the home team. This is the first time in a long time that St. Mary's is going on the road. They had no pressure on them, so the pressure is on Acadia to make that big jump to win their bowl game. But I think St. Mary's will win this football game and move on.
There may be no pun intended, but I'm still going to give you points for it. It was a good one. We'll move on to the Yates Cup, McMaster versus Western. Can McMaster erase that defeat from earlier on in the season, or does Western continue their role?
Ray, this is probably the best game out of the four, I think, in terms of the potential that it has to be that epic, classic Yates Cup final. And I have to give the slight edge to McMaster. I just think right now with Western, with what they have going for them, yes, it will be a home game. Yes, they'll have a huge crowd for that football game. But looking at their problems, though, who will be their quarterback? And then that's the key question here. They went with Rosong as their quarterback this week, but is he the guy next week? And furthermore, if Donnie Marshall does play, how healthy is he? He's not in game shape. He hasn't played in almost a month and a half. So right now, as great as Western's been with their run game, if I'm McMaster, I load the box up with 8-9 guys, stop that run, force them to beat you with a pass with their arm. And that's why I think McMaster, if they get up to that fast start like they had against Queens last weekend, then I think McMaster will win this football game and move on to the semifinals.
And Mo, finally, in Quebec, the Dunsmore Cup. Can Montreal knock off Laval in Quebec City? Is it possible to take them out of their game and finally put an end to this incredible streak that they've had, or do the Rouge et Or continue their dominance?
Well, if you look at the last game at Stade Telus, U of M gave them a good run for their money, and they lost by 10, and that was back in September, and then they beat them at home in Montreal. The thing that I'm looking at right now, Reed, going into this football game, is who will establish the run game first, U of M or Laval? And that's going to be key, because if you can stop that run of U of M's attacking run attack, to make Alex Nando appear as a passer, then I give the advantage to Laval. If somehow U of M, with their front seven, which is probably the best front seven in the nation. If they can get active and make things uncomfortable for Bruno Prudhomme in that run game, then U of M will be in this football game. It's a matter of them of minimizing their mistakes and not making too many errors that will allow Laval to take over the football game. But nonetheless, though, I will give the edge to Laval because playing at home with the experience that they have, and this has been a transition year for Danny Machocha and his football team, which has been phenomenal for them to do so well at this point of the football season. But right now, given the vast experience and playing at home, I have to give the nod to Laval Rouge-Grenadiers to win that football game to move on to the semifinals next week.
All right, Moe Khan, I want to thank you very much for joining me once again. It's been a pleasure to work with you this season. I'm sure we're going to have another couple of conversations before it's all said and done. The road to the Vanier Cup is in full swing, and the games on the 11th and the 12th to decide the semifinals are going to be spectacular.
They will definitely be spectacular. And Reed, one quick thing I just want to point out, with the event Cup in the same city as the Grey Cup, I had tweeted about this. I hope down the road with the CJFL, they'll join that foray of the Vanier Cup and, of course, the Grey Cup and have a week-long worth of football games in the host city of the Grey Cup and Vanier Cup down the road. And that will be fantastic to see more football be played and be witnessed by everyone that will be in whichever city it is down the road.
A real festival of Canadian football.
Absolutely, without question.
That would be beautiful. Moe Khan, thank you for joining me.
Take care.
And we want to remind you to continue to listen to Rouge Radio, and thank you for supporting Canadian football.